Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. I'll get everyone a couple seconds here to join. I'm Home Healthcare News editor Andrew Donlin. Thank you to CareXM for sponsoring today's webinar. Today we'll be discussing best practices for improving patient experience, as well as increasing referrals and patient scores while scaling your organization. I'm joined by Bridger Meekum, the VP of Marketing for CareXM, as well as Laura Dyer, the Director of Product for CareXM. It's going to be a fantastic conversation. If you guys have any questions during today's webinar, feel free to put those in the Q&A box and we'll try to get to those at the end. Other than that, Bridger and Laura, do you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves and then also your organization?
Yeah, sure. So I'll go here to this, change this. First off, thanks, Andrew. Secondly, and especially, thank you to everyone joining us today and those that registered and will watch later. We appreciate it and look forward to the discussion. I'm Bridger Meekum, VP of Marketing at CareXM. Come from, consumer goods space for a long time, had some success there and moved into SaaS. And really fell into healthcare technology, the place that I always wanted to go to, and really solve for some of the problems that I've experienced with my loved ones, and what's faced not only home health hospice, but healthcare overall. So very happy to be here, very happy to be a part of, the vision and mission of CareXM and work with the partners that we have. Laura, if you're okay speaking to you, or I can do it either way.
Sure. My name is Laura Dyer. I'm the Director of Product with CareXM. As you can see from my credentials, I'm also a registered nurse. I've been with our company in its many forms for the last 10 years and just been really excited to see how we can help support and really impact the home health and hospice space for the better. Really trying to drive efficiencies and better patient outcomes as a whole. So I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you, Laura. So today what we're going to be uncovering is, of course, the patient experience and really how that's directly tied to the clinician experience. We all know that, whether it's customer experience, patient experience, the person interacting with the patient, with the customer, is directly tied to not only partially the outcome, but as well as the experience itself. Patients at the end of the day just want to feel like you care. And even if you have a problem and it's not resolved per se, if you show care, if you show that you truly are trying to help, that makes all the difference in the world, right? And so, but to do that, you need self-care. I'm a much better father and husband when I'm actually taking care of myself as well, better worker as well. So really putting at the heart of it is patient experience, patient care, but the lifeblood, the blood feeding it, is clinician experience and clinician care. So we'll uncover some of that. We'll also talk through kind of the changes in buying behavior and how we make decisions daily on what even toothbrush we're going to buy. We look at reviews, we look at word of mouth advertising, and we all have a share of voice, which is beautiful now. We can share our experiences to the world, to our network. Then lastly, Laura, my much better counterpart, will uncover the best practices for scaling your census. We'll uncover several of those to elevate patient outcomes and scores while also delivering a better clinician experience. Those go hand in hand. With that, I'll get started here and kind of set the stage. Actually, first I got to introduce my company. So we've been around actually since 2008. We have over 4,000 partners throughout the US and deal with over 7 million annual patient interactions on an annual basis. And at the heart of everything that we do, the reason I'm here, the reason Laura's here, the reason why we're all here is to elevate the care experience overall. And with that, we'll set the stage on what we're going to uncover today. So I've already touched on this a bit, but in home health and hospice, the patient and clinician experience are so intertwined, and we are asked to do more with less. If I was, I'll do that example a little later, but that experience itself is really at the heart of what drives so much, whether it's more referrals, more patients, better reviews, better outcomes, but it also can lead to more retention, less stress at night trying to figure out how you're going to scale your home health or hospice agency. When if you have a growth of 20% in patients, how am I going to hire for that? And at the root cause is unscheduled interactions. So we'll unpack that a little bit later, but those are very intertwined, and something that what we are focused on is creating a better patient experience through empowerment of clinicians. So here, picture says 1,000 words, right? This nurse, our nurses, your nurses, you can feel the sense of you have two combining macro trends right now in this space, and we're all familiar with it. We have almost doubled in our population of 65 plus, of 50 plus. 9 out of 10 people that are 50 plus want to age in place. So we have a significant growth in patient population that we serve, and yet we have a drying up pool of nurses to serve them. So how do we solve for it? Our company, yes, we partner with folks. We can take 1% to 100% of your calls, but we need to solve for the problem long term, and we have to be flexible and agile. Those companies that are flexible and agile in home health hospice are going to win in this space. We're going to win long term. We're going to deliver, most importantly, a better patient experience, and hopefully re-attract nurses to this industry. And so it's very important, of the utmost importance, and something that drives all of us. And to solve for what she's feeling, to what your nurses, he or she may be feeling, and to provide work-life balance tools, which you may scoff at that. Some of our partners have, but we deliver on that, and that's what we strive for and bring to the table. So as we talk, we've talked about this before in terms of the quadruple aim and the 4 targets of healthcare, which really are the patient experience, the clinician experience, lower costs, and better patient outcomes. Those 4 targets are really at the heart of what we do. But how do you do all 4 at the same time? And again, it's in disruption, it's in innovation that we can deliver on all 4 of those items at the same time, because often they feel like conflicting ideals. How do I deliver a better clinician experience and give them better tools, which has a cost, while also trying to lower costs overall for my healthcare? We'll uncover that. All right, so the patient experience, we're all familiar with that. We've done that, right? We make buying decisions every day. Well, the customer experience, the patient experience, there's a reason why this graphic has a slash next to it. That's shifted, it's changed. We now are more educated. Like I said earlier, I can go review what toothbrush I want to buy and how many good reviews it has for my teeth. I'm going to make sure I'm choosing that for my healthcare provider, and especially for my loved one's provider. So the patient experience has never been more important, because a patient that's dissatisfied can quickly grab a microphone and share their experience with the world, with their network. And the impact of that is far-reaching. Also, as I've kind of unpacked here, the patient and caregiver perception of care is so important now. Yes, the outcome, we want better outcomes, of course, but we also need to deliver a quality of care, an interaction that shows that we truly care about each patient, that the caregivers, their loved ones, their families know that we care. If I'm on this call today, this meeting, and I grab my phone and take a call, how would you feel? How would you feel? You would feel that I don't care, that I am not involved in the conversation. And that's how patients can feel. It's no fault of the nurse. He or she is trying to deliver a quality of care that exceeds expectation, but he or she also has demands in our environment to be on call. And that is really at the heart of what we're solving for. As I mentioned earlier, aging in place. We all know it. Hopefully your phones are ringing with patients that want to be admitted, and the growth within 50 plus is incredible. And 9 out of 10 adults 50 plus want to age in place. That's shifted in just the last 4 years. 4 years ago, it was 75%, 3 out of 4 adults. Now it's 90%, that quickly. COVID has had some things to do with that, of course. We're now a little bit more homebodies, as I'm here now in my home. But those macro trends aren't changing, and it's a problem that we have to solve for. I already touched on that. The 1.2 million additional RNs needed by 2030. Think about that for a second. I'll go back. You have a 73% increase in 65 plus since 2011. So a very much growing patient population, while also a growing gap of nurses available. We're all trying to hire RNs. We're all trying to hire more clinicians. That's not solving for the problem. We need to create a better clinician experience together to attract more people to this space. And we also need to solve for the more immediate problem that as your census grows, how do you then serve those patients without hurting the clinician experience or hurting the patient experience because your clinicians don't have the bandwidth to serve them. So this to me is, again, our company was really built by the home health hospice nurses that we now serve. That's really the beauty of how we partner with people. It's about solving for what she's feeling. It's solving for what a nurse feels. And he or she, yes, they're very dedicated. It's a calling in this space. But how do you clock out? You love your patients. You feel, even when you finally have a chance to spend time with family or take care of yourself, you're still thinking about the patients that you just saw and how they're doing. You're dealing with the loss of a friend in hospice. And then you're treating patients, of course, while on call, which again is how do you do that and still maintain the highest standards of care? So listen and empower your staff. Listen to them, understand them, but more importantly, support them. That's what's going to drive retention. And we'll uncover some strategies there. It's not just me giving bumper sticker advice here. We'll uncover some of that, but truly listen, get feedback from your clinicians. I'm sure you're doing that now, but having the tools, technology, and ability to truly clock off is going to deliver a much improved care experience for all involved. So as we transition here, and as I've touched on, the impact of word of mouth. I'm sure many of you bought something in the last couple of days. Maybe go to Amazon, look at Walmart.com, or even if you're going to go buy a car, you're looking at reviews, you're seeing what people say. You can see what people say on social media. You can see what people say on Google. Your businesses, most of them, should be on Google My Business. You can quickly search for home health care near me and see the agencies nearby, how they're rated, what the reviews are, how many reviews you have, and that's how patients and their loved ones are making their decision now. They may have a referral of 3 different home health agencies, hospice agencies, but they're going to go and Google that first. They might look you up. They might look at home health care near me, and they're going to assess their decisions on what they're seeing from patients previously. So the impact is far, far reaching. And it goes beyond CAHPS. Here is a hospice survey data, I think from 2019. As we like to say, minutes and moments matter, and they absolutely do. Timeliness of care, especially when you're dealing with a healthcare crisis, minutes can feel like hours. And waiting for a call back for 30 minutes doesn't meet the need. So what's interesting now, though, is with CAHPS, it's beyond just CAHPS. Now patients are, again, deciding what if they're going to admit their loved one or admit themselves based on the reviews that they see on Google, on Facebook, on various other mediums, Yelp. So it's beyond CAHPS. CAHPS is of the utmost importance, trust me. We are no stranger to it, but it goes beyond just CAHPS as well. I've already touched on this, but the sharing of voice, I can quickly, right after, grab my phone, write a review, submit it to Google, and within 2 days have an approval and share my review, my experience with the world. I can share it socially. Word of mouth advertising, I'm in marketing, is the strongest mechanism of any marketing that I can do. Advocacy, people that actually have a connection with your home health agency, that's the difference. That changes things from negative reviews and patients avoiding you to then patients coming in droves and wanting to interact with you and be, they have confidence and trust. Social proof, validation is needed. So as we talk about this and buying decisions and how patients and their loved ones decide who to go to for their healthcare and who to choose from a provider standpoint, 95% of patients really research online reviews in their decision-making process. Think about that, 95%. And 70% of patients age 60 plus rely on positive patient reviews. So this is the new reality. We have to focus on, number one, the patient experience, deliver a better clinician experience, and entice more reviews, get those from a social media standpoint, from a Google standpoint, and ensure that we're delivering on what we all want to deliver, better outcomes and improved patient experience. So again, ease of research, educated customers. I can look on my phone in 2 seconds, well, maybe 10, and see the home health agencies near me quickly, fast. And the impact of this, of a negative review, for instance, 40% of patients will refuse to select a provider with poor reviews. 40%, 4 out of 10. Think about that. If we solve for this, think about the growth that we all can achieve. So we have to deliver. Lastly, the power of advocacy. You flip that on its head. With positive reviews comes social proof, comes validation, and becomes advocacy. As you treat patients and their care network, their loved ones, they're more likely to recommend to others. So even if you get a referral from another large health system, they're still looking, they're still researching you on Google, they're still looking you up. It's not just the referral. And the power of actual patients referring other patients is going to be even more impactful to your business. So lastly, well, hold on 1 second. All right, I want to share with you just quickly this video, and I'll toss it over to Laura after with some closing things here, but I'm going to share this with you right now. Hold on, bear with me.
Our census has grown since we instigated CareXM, what, at least 60 patients?
Oh, at least, yeah.
Maybe more, which is 30% of our total census, at least. So, and we haven't had to increase staffing at night and are still able to provide good customer service to patients. I was in a meeting with them just 2 days ago, and they were saying that they couldn't do their job were it not for CareXM now. It would be impossible because of the call volumes that we have.
They can be with the patient that's in front of them, knowing that other people calling are getting attention too.
Has been with us for 15 years, and she did telepage back way before we had CareXM, and she said, yeah, it's a completely different world, and there's no way they could do their job now were it not for that tool.
Okay, so with that, really the peace of mind, you hear that repeated there in that video. The peace of mind of knowing that you have backup to where you can then, if you have an influx of unscheduled interactions, an influx, a spike of calls, you can route those. You can quickly do so. We do in less than a minute. Our average is 32 seconds that we can answer a call, even after it routes to your nurses first. That is so vital, not only to the patient, but the clinicians that you have. It buys time, it buys bandwidth. So with that, I'll turn it over to Laura. And sorry if I was long-winded. I'm a marketer, so I tend to talk too much. But Laura, if you want to kick it off, it's to you.
Thanks, Bridger. Do you want to switch?
Yes, I'll switch the screen. Just bear with me for 1 second. I'm going to turn off my camera. Okay. Oh.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about some best practices when scaling your census. And within our world here at CareXM, I've been a nurse and a triage nurse in particular with CareXM for 10 years. And when I started, triage nursing was new, and we were really trying to figure out how we could best support hospice and home health agencies. We all know that after hours, when those patients call in and they need support, you also have the visit needs. There's this balance that you have to strike between handling the phone calls of patients, which are sometimes equally as important as making visits and doing hands-on patient care. So when we look at both home health and hospice, we've actually taken a unique approach to how we measure and gauge staffing efficiencies, productivity, patient experience by looking at call volumes. There's a metric that we've actually come up with over the years as we've been looking at a variety of different agencies that we've supported, and we've learned that on average, about when you have a hospice census of say 100, you can expect about 100 calls per week after hours. So about 1 patient call per week after hours for hospice. For home health, it's a little less, understandably so. It's about 1 in 10 patients. And those are patients that are calling in for a variety of different reasons, but they need support after hours. And that's why there are nurses available after hours, whether it's to answer that phone call and answer a question or make a patient visit. So when we look at how do we balance that growing need as you grow your census to support both the call volume and the patient visit need, we actually go back to our roots, I guess, a little bit with contact center staffing matrices. So this chart that you see here now, this is a pretty typical chart that you would see if you're running a call center. And we like to show this to our clients to help them understand that it's really typical for smaller agencies that are trying to support their own patients, doing it in-house. It's really hard to meet that perfect staffing level. So you see that gray line, and that is the call volume. Those are the patients that are calling in that need to speak with a nurse after hours. Well, when you have 1 staff member or maybe 2 staff members, that's the orange line. You have the number of staff that are available to take those calls. And often you have more supply than demand. You don't have as many phone calls, but you have the staff available. And for those who are looking at the dollars, that's an added cost. There's not this easy way to balance the cost and then also account for when those periods of high call volume hit. They always happen. They're unpredictable, but you know that they're going to happen. That's why you staffed enough to handle that high call volume. But even when you staff enough, there's going to be peaks where you can't have enough staff available. And that's where you have that orange line below that gray line. And that gap is where you have patient frustration. They're waiting on hold. They're waiting minutes to speak with a nurse when they have a critical need. And you can never really prepare perfectly to handle both those times of slow call volume and the times of high call volume. In a typical call center, when you have a really high volume of calls and you're able to staff a high volume of agents, you can fit your staffing matrix to more of the line of the call volume, as you see here in this chart. So it's easier to handle those waves of call volume as well as the dips in call volume, because you have a larger staffing pool to pull from. Now, I know this probably doesn't seem very exciting for those that are in hospice and home health. Like, how does this apply to me? Well, in hospice and home health, you have calls that you're taking after hours. And as much as it's not a call center, you're not in a physical building, you do have to account for how to handle those calls. So this chart here, this is another really common call center metric and statistic they look at, that when you have lower call volume and lower staffing numbers because of the lower call volume, it translates into a higher cost per call because of those large gaps between the number of staff and the number of calls that you're handling. So we typically look at this and help our clients to understand, when you have maybe a census less than 20,000, you're going to staff between 1 and 9 nurses to take those calls. But because of those gaps, you're going to find about a 29% productivity rate, which is fairly low. And on the flip side, then you have a cost per call of upwards of $47 per call. And that's a lot to have those nurses that are staffed waiting to take the call, waiting to make a visit, and maybe those calls don't come. It's a lot to pay for when you don't have those calls coming in. And it's really easy to say, well, increase your census, increase your call volume. But again, you have to consider the calls and then also the visits that are being made, as I'm sure all of you know. It's really hard to be in 2 places at once, to take a phone call and support a patient. So as we've been really trying to navigate the water of figuring out how to optimize that productivity rate internally, we've also looked at how we can help our clients optimize their productivity rate as well. And one of the ways that we've done that is actually helping to reduce the call volume overall. Now, that might sound counterintuitive based on the slides that I just showed, but in our world, we really want to focus on the patient experience. Now, it's great to make sure that we have staff to handle that call volume and that we can answer it really quickly. But at the end of the day, we're all here to make sure that patients are having their needs met, that they are cared for. And one thing that we started to do a few years ago was put into charts the reasons for patient calls. And so you can see here an example of one of our reports. And we have on the left-hand side, that blue bar, that is a particular agency and how many calls on average do they receive in a week's time or in a month's time for particular call codes. And what we've seen some of our clients do is pick one of those call codes, say medication. Why are we receiving a lot of medication calls after hours? And should we be receiving those calls? You know, occasionally, yes, you're going to have a patient that has a change in status. Maybe they're having more pain and they need to take more pain medication and they run out. But ideally, you'd want those case managers to be checking in with the patients to make sure that they have everything that they need and that they're prepared for the evening or for the weekend. And medication seems to be one of those focus points that's really easy to track and really see how can we improve our workflows during the day and see that impact and potentially decrease the call volume for medication calls in particular after hours. Again, our goal here being helping the patient feel like they're supported and getting the right amount of care. But then on the other side, you also give your nurses that bandwidth back where they're not having to deal with those, what we call the unscheduled patient interactions, but even more so, the preventable unscheduled patient interactions. If you have a medication call, patient needs a refill, that could have been something that was handled during business hours. And you want your nurses after hours to be focused on patient care that really needs their attention, not something that could have been handled by someone else during the office hours. One of our clients in particular, they actually monitored this for a period of time, and they made some changes within their business and had their case managers check in on their patients at the end of the day and make sure that they had all of their medications. And then they did a full check on the Friday night before the weekend, and they saw a decrease in after-hours medication calls by 50%, which was huge. And their nurses felt it. They felt that they could more focus on the patients that needed their attention. And that was a huge positive both for the nurses and for the patients. The other key piece that we also try to educate our clients on is timeliness of care, or first call resolution. And as we've had our clients and the agencies that we support, as we've moved through this journey with them, we used to take all of the calls for our clients, and we used to try and support them the best way we could. But we learned over time that the best way for the clients to support their patients and for the patients to feel that support was if the clients actually supported the patients themselves, if they had their nurses who were in that area, who knew their patients more directly, that they were taking the calls themselves. Now, that does seem a little backwards when you think of an answering service or a triage service, but we're here to take the calls. But we also have learned that that does provide a better experience. But we want to make sure that the call goes to the right nurse at the right time. So we've developed a mobile app that many of our clients have used, where it uses this simple logic of, am I available? Am I the one that's on call? Am I not available because I'm with a patient, focusing on the patient care? And using that logic, really basic logic, to route the phone call actually has given our clients that control, that peace of mind to say, hey, if they have a nurse that's available, that nurse can take the call. And we can actually send it maybe to the closest nurse to the patient. And if that nurse then needs to make a visit, they are the ones that are going to be making the visit, and the patient doesn't have to repeat their story. It's provided a much better patient care experience on the whole. But we also recognize that not every call can be answered because of those times where the call volume is high. So we've provided this alternative or backup strategy for our clients to send their calls to us so that our staff can take them and support them. So again, their patients don't go waiting, aren't sent to a voicemail box, and they are actually answered, their call is answered by a nurse as quickly as possible. So next point to bring up, or next thing to consider, is aligning your strategy to your needs now, and then considering your growth strategy for the future. Go to the next slide, Richard. So this is actually a little bit of a diagram based on what I was just talking to, and that is having this flexibility or control to determine where your calls can go. So we have this diagram that just appeared. There's this call flow, this pathway that you can follow. You have a patient or caregiver that's home, and they make a phone call, and that call gets routed into our environment, our system that's called CXM. And based on the business logic that's been defined and the client's preference, the agency can say, hey, you know what? We have nurses that are available to take that call. And if the nurses can't take the call, then it can fail over to your staff, or vice versa. The call can go to our staff and then fail over to yours as a backup for escalation. We also have non-clinical patient care advocates that can take the call. So there's this non-clinical component if we do need some non-urgent calls taken, that we can have message taken for the office to follow up on next business day. And all of this is looped together with our intelligent routing solution that says, hey, if a call or if a nurse is available, let's send the call to them. If the client's nurse is available, let's send the call to them. And really be as efficient as possible with sending that call to the right nurse at the right time. And this, if you click again, Bridger, thank you. This is again another model, another example of what can be done, what can be set up with our routing logic. Some of our agencies have said, you know what, hey, we can have our staff taking the calls from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. That seems to be a busy time for calls. We want our staff to handle the calls. And then our nurses, the CareXM staff, will take those calls from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. and only escalate when there's a visit need. And we can help support that client just as effectively and efficiently in that model as if the client were taking all of their calls, or if we were taking all of their calls. The key being there's this control of however it works best for your team, and whatever is the best workload for your staff, where the call volume is, where your staffing is, we can help support you based on whatever it is, whatever model that you want to follow. We've actually also had some clients interested in setting up their own call centers. This is fairly new and actually really exciting for us because we, as a triage team who've had a triage center now for 10 years, it's, in a way, it's a new field of nursing, especially as the pandemic has really transformed the healthcare space. Telehealth, triage nursing, telephone triage, it's a new thing that is more widely recognized and accepted. And we recognize the need to help other nurses know how to support patients better on the phone. It's not as easy as just answering the phone. You have to be prepared and know how to address the caller's need. Simple things like body language and facial expressions, you can't express that over the phone. And so being able to have that type of communication and give the patient and caregiver that type of support while on the phone, it are some things that we help educate our clients on, and helping them understand how to set up a triage team successfully. What are those staffing matrices that we build, and how do they set those up so that they can be successful in their own environment? What are the tools that we use, and how do we document and escalate? How do we know who's on call? All of these little details that don't come to light until they're trying to go and build it themselves, we've learned as we've been doing this for the last 10 years. So it's been really exciting for us to really share this knowledge with others as they've tried to do the same thing. Here's a little infographic of just some of the things that we've seen as a benefit using this flexible staffing alternative, where it's not all your staff and it's not all an answering service or clinical triage team, where it's a hybrid blending of both. Finding that sweet spot for your agency, this flexible solution really provides a lot of benefit to both the agency, the clinicians, the patients. It's a real great set of outcomes for all involved. So we do have one case study that we're going to go over today. One of our partners and customers, Bristol Hospice, they have a number of different locations across the country, and we've been supporting them for several years. And this chart here is actually what we call a heat map. And there's different ways of presenting this, but this basically represents their call volume across the week, and each bar represents an hour of the day. So if you look at Saturday and Sunday, which if you're thinking of after hours call volume, that is the time of the highest call volume. And those pink and red bars are the middle of the day. And that's pretty typical. What we see very commonly is that the highest call volume after hours are between the 10 and 2 hours on Saturday and Sunday. And then in the weeknights, you have the higher call volume right after the office closes or right before the office opens, which I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. That's not a surprise. But we take this and we look at this and we try to help our clients understand these patterns and staffing to support it, but then also knowing that they're never going to be able to support all of those calls that come in. Or if they are, they might have overstaffing at some other times of the day. So helping them understand that balance, and that it's not this flat line, that the call volume is always the same every hour of the day. Depending on the hour, it can really vary. And this chart shows with Bristol Hospice, going back several years when we first started this project with them, of getting them to adopt the app routing concept. They started off with if you look at the, which line is it? The black line is their overall call volume, and the blue line is their routing percentage. So they started off slow, trying to really gauge what's going to work best for their team. And as things started to grow within their organization, their census started to grow, the call volume started to grow, and they started to take more calls. And that overall experience kind of hit a peak right before the pandemic, and then they needed to scale back. And so then they started taking fewer calls, and our team was able to handle the overflow as they made those adjustments, those flexible changes, to handle what they needed for their own agency, to support the clinicians and make sure that they weren't being overstaffed, or overworked and understaffed. Go to the next slide. Actually, Bridger, can you go to one slide past this? Thanks. This probably was the most exciting thing that we were able to realize with Bristol in particular, was the same growth of call volume, or growth of census. That's the gray line, and the blue line is their average census growth. So you see that they grew as an organization over the last several years. But one of the big metrics that we track that I mentioned previously is that calls per patient metric. And through the visibility that we gave them to their call routing, to their call volume statistics, and some of those reasons for the calls, reasons for the after hours calls, they were able to gauge and then make changes within their organization so that even as their census grew, their calls per patient did not. In fact, it decreased, and that's what that green line represents. So even though they were growing their census, their overall call volume wasn't growing at that same rate. And that meant that they were doing something right, or doing something to prevent those unscheduled patient interactions after hours, the ones that could be prevented. Of course, we know there's always going to be those unscheduled interactions that need to happen, but they were able to really address some of those needs and help their patients during business hours so that they didn't need to call in after hours, which was huge. And it was really exciting for us to be able to share that information with them. Sorry, Bridger, you can go. So this is just a snapshot of our mobile app that we've created, and really just driving home the point that using technology in general, whether it's our app or just technology, and adopting these new and evolving ways of doing things and supporting patients and supporting our clinicians. There are some really exciting changes in the tech space that are really focused on how to help improve and optimize efficiencies for providers and for improving the patient care experience. That's one of the things that we're really focused on, especially for those of us that are nurses within our organization. That is our primary focus. How do we improve the overall nurse experience while keeping the patient care experience at the top of mind as well?
Well, thank you, Laura. I'm actually going to share another video from one of our partners in Providence. And again, these are our partners. Let's see, did that cut my audio out? Maybe. Let's see here. Here we go.
But having the nursing background and having a nurse the first time you call answer the phone to help with symptoms immediately has made a significant impact on the care that we're able to provide to our patients and families. And the continuity of communication then back via the report portal, and we're able to see what happened all day long, in addition to the layer of support that our call center internally provides. It has significantly improved our communication scores.
Our scores went up 10 percentage points within a year. That's crazy. That doesn't happen.
You can see how many calls we're getting around end of life, the amount of refill requests we're getting after hours, how many patients need help with symptoms, or if there's a DME issue, and being able to have the ability for that transparency to go back and then work directly with the staff and put action plans together that flow up to our quality plan. Like, it's just so the transparency just allows for us to really tackle what our true problems are.
So with that, and I want to be clear, those are just our partners. Those are unsolicited, unpaid people just saying, you know, what we're trying to solve for, which we all are. We're all trying to solve for this. And the road ahead really, you know, I stated this earlier, it's really going to be interesting. It's something that, as we're dealing with the challenges that we face together in this space, the road ahead is exciting to me. It's exciting to all of us. It's something that we can readily solve for and truly change what hospice, end of life care, home care looks like, what our loved ones experience. And so as we talk about what the future holds, we can take 100% of your calls. We can do that within what, a couple of weeks, not months. We don't have to onboard staff and train them. We can take them right now due to our technology. And it's not an inchworm type strategy. It's something to where your census grows 20% and you're not sacrificing patient experience while you're trying to onboard a nurse. Well, first recruit them, find one, recruit them, bring them in, and then on top of it, hopefully they're good at triage. Hopefully, you know, they stay, they retain. And that takes time. It's 3 to 4 months to onboard. And you see help wanted signs everywhere, from McDonald's to Macy's to probably your home health hospice agency. We have some too, by the way. If you have some people, we'll take them. But the road ahead really is going to be based on innovation, just like it is in our great country that we live in. Innovation is really what drives us forward. It's progress. And who is going to win in this space? The home health hospice agencies that will win are the ones that deliver innovative strategies that are flexible, that are agile, and that don't sacrifice patient experience while you're trying to find more nurses. The heart of it is reducing unscheduled interactions. It's delivering on proactive care. The difference between reactive and proactive in anything in life is all the difference in the world, especially within healthcare. If I have a tuck-in call and I need my medication, when my wife, who just had a really tough C-section, and I had to call in to try and get her pain meds, and I had to wait 3 hours right on Friday night to hopefully get a call back, that's horrible. Versus someone calling me. Imagine the difference that I feel as a patient with a proactive approach. Someone calling me to make sure that I have a script for my wife, that I can actually deliver what she needs. It's all the difference in the world. And innovation is really going to be at the heart of who wins in this space. So with that, we'll turn it over to any questions that any of you may have. We're glad to answer. Hopefully, Laura and I will probably race to see who gets to answer first.
Okay, guys, great. Thank you for that. And we do have a few questions. The first one is, in terms of strategy, you spoke of 3 to 4 varied models of taking 1% to 100% of calls. How do you fit the model to the agency?
Do you want me to take that, Laura, or do you want to?
I can take it, or I can take a stab at it, I should say. It's really interesting. You would think that maybe there's a cookie cutter approach, and there is to a certain extent, but for the most part, we really try to interview our customers to help understand what their real pain points are. Before we just slap on a solution and say, here's what you should do, it's first understanding what that problem is that they're trying to solve. And by working with them, that's why we refer to our customers as our partners, because we're really not trying to sell them this one-size-fits-all solution. It's partnering with them to help them understand where are their strengths, where are their gaps, and where can we help put our solution that will really help solve what they need, instead of just saying, buy this, it'll solve all your problems, because we know that that's just not realistic. So it's really a partnership to help us understand where the pain points are. And there are some recommendations that we might have because we've done this a few times now. So we definitely will have recommendations, but it always starts with the interviewing process to understand what those pain points are before we jump in with any solutions.
Agreed. Yeah, no, you nailed it. I would say that, just exactly that. A lot of our partners start with wanting 100% of calls answered. They have a problem, they want it immediately solved. We can move, we're agile, we're quick, we can move fast. However, that comes with a cost. You know, it's a cost per call, cost per interaction. We're still staffing for it. And so what we try and do is truly drive that down. We're in the business, we take calls, but we're in the business of actually trying to bring those down, just because it's better for the patient, it's better for our partners, and it creates a long-term partnership that's scalable. And those models really are more of a journey map, so to speak, for a lot of our partners. It starts with 100% and it's kind of scales down, and that's the beauty of it. You can dial it up or dial it down real time. If you have a natural disaster, dial it up. If you have a slow, dial it down. It's based on an interaction basis, and the BI, the business intelligence, really provides proactive strategies, proactive approaches to not only for the patient, but also to really buy time, buy more bandwidth, and provide more work-life balance for your clinicians, your staff.
Okay, guys, and along the same lines, but I think still worth answering, can you take all of our calls if we want you to, and how fast?
Yes. Yes, we can.
And how fast?
Oh,
how
Laura,
fast?
that's Laura's.
Of course, it depends on size, and there is an implementation process. We also have, nurse licensing to consider, so that is a piece of it. We want to make sure that we have nurses that are credentialed that can take those calls. But our typical fastest turn-up time is about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, to get, because there's also a component of training. It's not a kick all the calls over to the triage team with CareXM, and then CareXM just does all the work. There is an element of partnering to determine what are the right escalation protocols. For example, if a patient calls in and they had a fall, was there an injury? Was there not an injury? And based on those, we make decisions. Do you want us to call your nurse? Do you want us to call the non-emergent lift assist? Those types of things, so that we can really make the right solution based on what our clients have available in terms of staffing on their side.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense.
One quick thing to add quickly, Andrew, sorry to interrupt you. The EMR, that's kind of what it enables, the speed of it. We interface, we have interfaces with some of the largest EMRs that, many work with. And rather than have to train on that specific EMR and that specific workflow, we have one that just interfaces and does real time with really most EMRs. And we integrate pretty quick as well. So if it's an EMR that we're unfamiliar with, we'll get familiar quick. We love integrations. So that's the beauty of it, is we don't have to then spend months recruiting and training, not only to triage, but also to work within your EMR. They can work within our system. It's one system, but it interfaces real time with really any EMR that most of our agents or partners work with.
Okay, great. And then I think one final question here. Our home health agency is smaller. Do you work with smaller agencies as well?
Yes. Okay. Really quick, I'll take this one, and Laura, you can correct me since I've let you go first now twice. So I'm gonna take the first stab. Yes, we absolutely do. One of our founders, Kevin Childs, likes to use the analogy of small farmer, big farmer, and our tools work for the smaller farmer, so to speak. This approach, this strategy, as Laura was going through those different approaches, really is a scaling plan. It's kind of a roadmap to grow. And so just like Bristol, they grew 5x in a few years, and we were able to support them with actually seeing their patient experience improve. Many agencies, many companies, you name the company, you grow 5x, you're going to have a lot of growing pains, and usually your customers are going to bear the brunt of that pain. They did not, and we were able to grow that and do so. So yes, we love to grow with companies. We love to see that growth. We like to unlock it, unleash it, and support it.
All right, guys, thank you so much, Laura and Bridger. That was fantastic. Thank you again, CareXM, for sponsoring the webinar, and also thank you to our audience. A lot of you guys stuck with us from the start to finish. Hope you learned something, and you can reach out to the CareXM team if you have any other questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.